Ernesto Cisneros is the author of Efrén Divided, which has been described as a love letter to children of families torn apart by deportation. The award-winning story has been named Best Middle Grade Book of 2020 by numerous literary organizations. And what makes this more amazing is this is the veteran teacher's first published work. Ernesto joins me to discuss Efrén Divided, how his teaching career led him to becoming an author, and his family's own immigration story. Welcome, Ernesto.
This is an honor. I mean, you're a champion for civil rights, so I am honored to be here. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, and congratulations on Efrén's Divided success as well. Just to name a few of the accolades the book has garnered, it has been named the Middle Grade Book of 2020 by organizations including Kirkus and the American Library Association, and it's also been named the Best Book for Kids 2020 by the New York Public Library. Were you amazed at all of these accolades on your first book out?
It surpasses anything that I ever could have imagined. My book debuted during the middle of the pandemic. So, I really didn't have any expectations. And even before that, I've been trying to publish books for over 14 years without any success at all. So you have your first book come out like this. It's been very surreal and just amazing.
You say you were trying to get published for the last 14 years. You've had other books and ideas.
I was that one kid in the back of the classroom that was always daydreaming. And when I became a teacher, my students were the ones that encouraged me. They're like, these stories are really good, because I would write stories along with them. And I wanted them to see not just the successes, but how difficult it was too. So I would just share my stories, like, see how bad the story is? Let's fix it together. And I used it as part of the writing instruction. And they kept encouraging me, saying, these are really good. You really should publish these. And so I've been teaching for 25 years.
What grades are you teaching?
Middle school, 7th and 8th grade. I love teaching middle school. It's almost like a fork in the road. They're the most impressionable years.
They certainly are. 14 years, you're writing stories. You're not picked up by anybody. Did you ever want to give up?
Yes. And here's the strange thing about not giving up. A lot of times, it's a lot easier to give up for yourself, but when you're fighting for other people, it makes it a lot more difficult to do that. And I knew that my students were always watching. I wasn't scared of failing. I had given up on the dream already, but I knew my students were watching, and I knew that my children at home were watching me. And when they were seeing me in the living room and I was writing at 2 a.m, I was being a good role model for them. And that's what my parents did for me. Seeing my mom working 70 hours a week, and my dad leaving before 4 a.m. to go work, whether it was 100 degrees, 110, or if it was pouring outside. And so, yes, my students were the ones that kept me motivated. They kept asking, Mr. C, did you write anything? How many pages did you write? In fact, one of the greatest rewards is that some of my students are writing books. They see me, and they're like, he grew up right here too. He's just like me. In fact, where my school Fundamental is built, I used to ride my bike there. I learned how to drive a car there in that neighborhood. And I would even have little competitions with some of the students. And I'll be honest, sometimes they would beat me. They'd come back and they'd have 6 pages written over the weekend, and I would show up with my 2. That was one of the biggest thrills of the writing experience.
What is Efrén Divided about?
It's a story about a 12-year-old boy whose life is turned upside down when his mom is deported, and he's left fending for himself and for his little brother and sisters, Max and Mia. I hope that his mom will somehow be able to come back to him. And so he's pretty much taking care of his siblings, which is something that I've seen throughout my years teaching. I see it all the time.
So is that where you got the inspiration for writing about this, or did this come from your own history and your own biography?
Yes and no. So yes, I come from a family of immigrants, and so the whole experience is nothing new to me. However, it was during actually the 2016 elections, and it felt like hate was given a national platform. There were so many negative things being said about specifically Latinos at the time, and I know as a child I internalized everything that I used to hear, and I didn't want my students or my own children to internalize these same things. So I decided to write a story that would actually encompass and embrace the beauty of our culture and to focus on everything that they should be proud of. I knew I wanted to write that, so I started writing about all the beautiful things that I grew up with in my community that I saw, both as a kid living in Santa Ana and both as a teacher, teaching also in Santa Ana. And then during the 2016 election, mid-year, 3 of my students shared with me that one of their parents had been deported mid-year. And these are the same kids who are still doing their homework, they're still showing up, and you really would never have known that they were going through something so difficult. Personally, I would have just fallen apart. So I'm just in awe of these students. And I decided that I needed to do something for them. And so that's how the story kind of came to be. I wanted to send a message to those kids that there's allies out there, there's people they can turn to, so that they're not alone. And honestly, I had pretty much given up. I was thinking that Efrén Divided was going to be printed out in little packets and just handed amongst my students and shared with my own personal kids. I never really thought this was going to be published. My kids just went crazy for it. So I contacted my agent. I'm like, I wrote this little story about an immigrant family and an immigrant experience. I don't think there's a market for it. I don't think anybody would want to read this, but take a look. And my agent, Deborah Warren, fell in love with it. By the way, this was after about 6-7 years of submitting and not getting any bites on anything. 2 weeks later, we received an offer from HarperCollins.
Wow. So that's persistence. What is the success of this book meant to you, not just professionally, but personally as well?
Well, professionally, I don't really like accolades. I'm kind of a shy person, but the success, what it means to me is that, like the title kind of indicates, Efrén Divided, it's the way that I was feeling at times growing up. And I always felt very divided from the country. And then especially during 2016, I just feel like at times it's very difficult to love a country that doesn't love you back. And so I felt very, very divided and very split in that aspect.
Is that what you meant when you said that you internalized a lot of the rhetoric?
Yes, I did. And looking back, this is something that I was aware of as a child, but looking back, my entire family was a family of service. And what I mean by that is that my parents and my uncles and my cousins, everybody who I saw, we cut grass, we washed dishes, we worked in factories, we babysat, we fixed cars, and that's all we were in my eyes. And so I had this sense of disentitlement. And so I think part of what I want to do with Efrén Divided is to erase that sense of disentitlement. I want these kids to see themselves on the page and to think, you know what? Yeah, I want to share my stories too. My stories are valuable, they're important, and they deserve to be shared. Yes.
And you're a perfect example of that. Do you see that in your students now?
Well, I teach in a Title I school, which means it's a low-income neighborhood. All the students there qualify for free lunches at my school. I used to work in an elementary school that if you took the 1 mile radius of the school, it was the third most densely populated 1 mile radius with children in the nation. That's due to all the apartments and multiple families living in the apartments. And that's actually the community where the book is based. The cover of the book is actually loosely based on that school. A little shout out to Pio Pico Elementary in Santa Ana, and that's where I taught. I grew up in the neighborhood there. I used to play basketball right there at the Boys and Girls Club across the street. All those experiences of growing up in the same neighborhood and seeing the things that are in this book, they're all in there.
You said that you were the first generation born here. Where did your parents come from?
My parents came from Michoacan, Mexico. And when they were very young, my dad and my mom decided they wanted to change the trajectory of where their lives were because there weren't too many opportunities there where they were living. And my dad had heard about the American dream. And so he had this itch and this burn, and he knew it wasn't going to go away. He was able to secure a tourist visa, and he came over and he worked really hard. I believe he began washing dishes, and then he got a job at a golf course, cutting grass there. He was such a good employee that they offered him a position. And he saw a future for himself that he wasn't seeing in Mexico. And so he went back, got reunited with my mom, and she got a visa as well. And she came over, and I was US born, and they filed for residency, and they were able to get that. And so the family came over. That's how our American dream kind of came to be.
So when do you celebrate the Mexican culture in Efrén Divided?
I do. You know what? I wanted to showcase the beauty of both cultures. We have such little representation with Latinos, and I wanted to make sure that I got it right. And quite honestly, I kind of struggled with that, to be honest, because I always felt like I didn't belong in Mexico and I didn't belong in the US, and my culture was a little bit of, ambiguous, being Mexican American. But yes, I did my best. Unfortunately, the Latino community was able to read over the book and make sure that I was very respectful to both cultures.
Are there any characters in the book that's based on you or your family?
Yes. And just about everybody's kind of loosely based on people, but the person who is responsible for this book is my mom and my dad. I actually wanted to, at a point, name this Soaphead Boy. And it's because growing up, I would always see how amazing my parents were. I never got up in time to catch my dad go to work. He'd be up, if I got up at 4 a.m. and I'd be looking for my dad, he'd be gone already. And my mom would always be impressed with me that she worked in the factory about 70 hours a week, which is just ridiculous. She'd come back, her hands would be hurting, and yet she would still go and cook for us and leave meals for us. And I would watch her, like in the book, exactly right out of the book, she would be making things for us like sopes. And all it is just, maize and beans, and it's not very expensive, but I love them. And I would watch her, warm them up, and then she would take the maize, and you have to kind of bend them with your hands while they're steaming hot. And I always watched her. I'm like, how do you not burn yourself? And I always thought that she was kind of like Superwoman, or like I use the term in the book is Soaphead Woman. I've got fantastic characters there. I wanted to pay homage to all the hard work that they put in. And I wanted to invite the readers, everybody who has never met a Mexican American family or a Mexican family, to kind of come and meet my family. And like I said earlier, there was so much hate being and so many derogatory things being said about us that I wanted to showcase what I perceive to be the reality.
What did you showcase?
The love. I want to showcase the culture and the beauty. One of the things I noticed about when people are saying hurtful things is because it's really easy to hate people you don't really know very well. And I wanted to show that we all have so many things in common. And who who here wouldn't do anything they can to help better the lives of their family members? Who here doesn't have fond memories of their parents and them being their role models? And I think it's the love and the sense of community, but I also wanted them to have a sense of pride. How do you not honor people like that in your books? I mean, you're talking about trying to come up with good characters.
Obviously, Efren's divided because he has a parent who gets deported. What else was he divided about?
It was actually, like I said earlier, that I felt it's really difficult to love a country that doesn't love you back. And the character in the book is actually listening to everything that's being said. And the timeline for the book, although it's not specifically stated, it is 2016. It is during the elections. And all the things that were being said, he was hearing. And so it's hard not to internalize those things. So a lot of people, the way the election goes, they think it's just a preference, a political preference. But when you're a person of color, that's not what it's like to us. It's a rejection of who we are as people of color.
Was it difficult to write about all of this to such a young audience?
Well, as an author, I think it's our responsibility. You don't just expose children to these themes. They were living these things and they were seeing it in the media. And I was sitting in the classroom and I was watching it in the community. My responsibility as the author is to help them navigate the topic. And that's what I was trying to do as positively as I possibly could. I wanted the story to be true to itself and to focus on the love of the community, the love of the family, and the hope that the family had.
So somebody reads Efrén Divided at the end. What do you want them to know and learn?
I think the message there is that honestly, we're all pretty much the same. To all the Efrens out there, I want them to know that they have allies, that you guys can turn to your teachers, that you guys have your counselors, that there's people in the community that can actually help you guys with anything that's going on in your lives. You're not alone. You don't have to take on the responsibility. You don't have to take on all the burdens all by yourself. I think that's what I want to tell them. And for everybody else who doesn't know a Mexican-American family or an immigrant family, take a moment to get to know us a little bit better. And this is basically an open invitation to come into my world. There's a character, Efren's best friend, David. And what I wanted to do was actually kind of show America what is possible. And so you have a white kid and a brown kid, and they're best friends, and they acknowledge each other's cultures, and they see the differences, but they embrace them. And so what I wanted to do was show America that, look, these two kids, they're kids, and they're living in Santa Ana, and yet they connect, and they're pretty much like brothers. And I don't see why we can't do the same. And I wanted to let them be role models for everybody else and for what can be in this country.
So does the book have a hopeful ending?
Without giving away too much, the trickiest thing about the book, because from the very beginning, I knew exactly how it had to end. And that's because I could not imagine being a student in a class. And imagine experiencing something like Efrén Nava does here in this book. And imagine that the ending is perfect and that everything works out perfectly for everybody. Could you imagine how hurtful that would be to that child? And you look in the mirror and you're thinking, why am I not worthy of this ending? Why is my life different? And so one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to be completely honest with those children, but definitely the story ends up in a very hopeful way. And hopefully I didn't give away too much.
Right. Yeah, because deportation is not a hopeful experience. It's a separation of families, especially for children growing up now without one or maybe both parents. So can you tell us what your next book is? I assume you're not done writing.
I am not done writing. There are books coming in 2022. Hopefully the pandemic things will go back to normal a little bit and I can kind of get to travel the country. And my biggest hope is to be able to meet all the kids. And I've been getting some amazing letters from children across the country. And these were sent over to me. This one is from Riverside. And I actually framed the letters that I received. And this one's written in Spanish, and it's by a student. And these are kids just like Efrén who are just sending me letters.
Where can people learn more about you and Efrén Divided?
Oh, they can go to my website, ernestocisneros.com. The one benefit to the pandemic has been that I'm able to tour all across America very easily. So please hit me up, and I would be happy to speak to your kids.
And Efrén Divided can also be found online?
Yes, people could go to indiebound.org, and that's powered by Bookshop. And you just type in your zip code, and they'll let you know of all the local independent bookstores available in your area.
Lastly, did you reach your American dream?
Growing up with a sense of disentitlement, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. So I kind of want to say yes in a personal way, but I want to see the American dream afforded to everybody, regardless of their race, sexual orientation, or anything.
Ernesto Cisneros, congratulations. Your first published book with all these awards and accolades, author of Efrén Divided. Check it out at your local independent bookstore. And thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on your show. Thank you. And thank you for all that you do. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.